This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Anyway, the meeting will come to order. We have minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes submitted for the last meeting?
I so move.
Second.
Motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Counselor Kwasinski.
Aye.
Counselor Coniff. Coniff?
Coniff.
Is that it?
Connie
Where did that come from?
Denham. Well, she's Connie. Counselor Connie. It's because it's Connie. Okay, come on.
Well, last
Okay,
time.
all right.
Wow.
All in favor? Everybody said aye. Good. They're approved. No public speak or anything. Let's just start in with the, I'm going to share the screen on the ordinance. Wait a minute. Okay, you guys can see this, okay? I made the changes. Well, first, let me say that I want to review how this happened. We got a resolution, and the resolution was to create a bee city area this is mostly for bees, and also to create a city council special committee. I made the suggestion that we create a committee of the city, which would act in a lot of ways, not just for the bees. So this was my idea to start with. Councilor Zara provided us with this ordinance, and we made the changes based on last meeting. We went from 9 to 7 voting members, 1 sitting councilor. We took out anything that had to do with mandatory work for any staff member, and the rest of it is stayed the same. I like the committee because there's a lot of interest in serving on this kind of committee. It's going to help with biodiversity, pollination, agriculture, climate ideas, anything like energy ideas. It's an advisory committee. It'll advise the city council, maybe provide legislation or advise the mayor for new policies. So I think it's a good committee to have, especially because it gets more people who are interested in this stuff involved. So that's my spiel. Anybody want to make any changes or comments? Connie, Omar?
Yeah, I think we've been talking about this, so I think these changes are in line with the things that we've been talking about. It's not something that would be in this ordinance. I think that the comments by Jeff Bagg and the mayor, I heard in terms of thinking about timing, in terms of we don't have we're putting together the climate action plan, and is this the right time to put this together, etc. But I think it's a good thing to be able to have in existence so that when those things come up, it's ready to go. And so they have.
And they can take action on their own. Yeah.
Right. So they can work on the Xerces thing now, etc. But use that climate action plan as a guidepost to be able to address those issues.
Actually, yeah, very good. JP, have any comments?
I just think this is a nice dovetail to the climate action plan. I think this will have some other opportunities for expansion in role. So I'm really very excited about this. I think the changes are good ones. I'm just taking another quick look. I know there's only one sitting city councilor to be appointed. Perhaps you could just someone could review the rationale for only one, just to refresh my memory, please.
I felt that more than one city council would be difficult because city councilors have a lot of work on their plate already. And he did say at least one, but not more than 2. we could put that language back and we would have one, but we talked about this and I thought we all reached a consensus that one was enough. Didn't we, President Gomez? Also, if we're going to reduce it to 7 members, which I think is appropriate for voting and for participation, we need to cut membership someplace. So that's the other reason, James.
I guess my only thought is that there may be 2 counselors at one time who are just very much excited about this role and could serve on this this new committee.
Well, being a member of the committee doesn't preclude you from attending any meetings.
Of course.
It is advisory. It's not, it has no authority other than to advise. I
agree.
To give an example, is the EDIC, is it an independent advisory committee that just gave us a vacant city or a vacant storefront ordinance for us to look at? Sorry. I think it would be good.
I don't have a strong, if Councilor Gomez felt that we should include that other language, no more than 2, at least 1 and no more than 2 gives flexibility, but I'm not tied.
If we do that, if we do 2 members, then we have to reduce something someplace else. And I want to get more citizens involved. JP, that's
we certainly want citizen input. There was some question and discussion at our last meeting about the Energy Advisory Committee and its role, and
we were worried about it being redundant to this committee, but we decided it wouldn't be, and that it'd be good to have them on here and to have voices for 2 would be good. So
I agree wholeheartedly, and I was concerned about possible consolidation. I just wanted to be sure that that wasn't what was being proposed.
We talked about it, but then we decided not to at the last meeting.
Good.
To eliminate the Energy Advisory Committee.
Excuse me?
We were talking about maybe we should seek to eliminate the Energy Advisory Committee, but we decided not to do that.
Right. I wasn't clear to me that that was a final decision, that we were still going to be able to look into it. And I'm glad that that's the case, that we're going to keep the Energy Advisory Committee. So I have no further questions. Looks good.
I'd like to send this to the full council for adoption. Does anybody have any other comments? Could I have a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to send the B's ordinance to the full council for review and for adoption. Does anyone have any further discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Krasinski?
Aye.
Councilor Denham?
Aye.
And Councilor Riss says aye, so we'll move it along.
Councilor Denham, I just wanted to say it took Councilor Riss probably about 12 or 14 years to get my name right. So
Okay, that's fair.
That's only because it's a Polish name. How am I going to? So we talked about the other 2 charter revisions last time. I really want to get into the vacancy in the office of the mayor and explain my thinking on this. A lot of this language was, well, first of all, Barbara suggested we look at Northampton's charter because they switched to a 4-year term right before we did. And we looked at it, and I looked at it and realized that they had a lot more language in there which talked about all the different things that could happen over 4 years, depending on when the mayor might vacate the position. So I'm trying to figure out how to make this bigger. I forget.
Go to the 100%.
Where is that? Oh, right here.
There.
Okay, all right. You see it better? So in the first section, this language about the city council president is unable to serve, for me, has a couple of points in it, in that the city council would elect somebody else to serve. Number 1, if you see this 3rd sentence of section 3(1)(a), that has to do with the mayor not having another job. That's what that has to do with. So if you were elected mayor, you had to get rid of your other employment or not be involved. I think the language is active in the other employment. But in this case, if we're going to ask an interim mayor, a city council president, to be the interim mayor, they shouldn't have to quit their job because they may not be on for longer than 120 days.
Mhm.
And secondly, maybe that interim mayor or that city council president says, you know, my boss won't let me do this. I can't be, or I'm going to have real difficulty doing my job. So I'm going to have to say, I don't want to be the mayor. Then the city council has to decide, okay, let's nominate some people who want to be interim mayor. So that's the thinking behind that.
That happened actually in Gardner.
Oh, did it?
One of my friends is a Gardner counselor, and she became the acting mayor for a little bit because the council president, well, I think in that case, it was kind of weird. Like the council president, for whatever reason, was not, didn't want to become acting mayor. So she like became council president in order, like they swapped roles so that she could become acting mayor. But then like, you know, she has like a job. So that wasn't something that she was looking to do forever. It was just until like they could do a special election, or I forget the exact details, but this is a situation that has occurred in other places, I guess what I'm saying.
The 120 days comes from me thinking that 90 days isn't enough time. We'll get into that. Because if we're going to have a special election, you need time for debates and all kinds of things to happen. But that's where the 120 days comes from. But the other thing that's important that it wasn't in the Northampton charter, I don't believe, is that the city council president doesn't lose his or her position on the council. In other words, they're going to be acting mayor, but they're still council. Now, Northampton for a while before they changed the charter, the mayor was the council president.
Yes.
So in this case, there's language further on where the president as acting mayor could vote unless there was a tie. I'm not sure if that flows, but that's what I was thinking. Anyway, we didn't want to have if the council president wanted to serve the temporary and had to give up their position on the council, you know, not be a councilor anymore, that's a lot to ask, right? That's my thinking anyway.
Oh, yeah. Especially if it's a short term, 4 months.
Right.
And you ran to serve, not to serve.
Now,
So I agree.
I'm going back and forth on that. Is 120 too long?
I kind of wonder if it might be. I see where you're going with it. I could go either way.
Well, if you look at the special election parameters down here, there's nomination papers. And then there's nomination papers have to be filed within 33 days of the vacancy, and the candidate shall file such within 47 days. Now that's all from Northampton, I believe, or from ours. So if it's 47 days and it's 90 days, there's still
43 days.
43 days. I think we should go back to 90 days. How does anybody else think? I think 120 is too long.
That's a month and a half for a special election. It's kind of intense, but
well, it was 90 days in the original charter. I think 90 days is good.
I would stay with the 120. I think it allows for an orderly process.
Okay.
I think the other is just too rushed and really doesn't give the public enough time to interact and engage and give it thought. You just barely get it going. Well, we're going to have an election. Oh, you're going to have an election? This is not at the usual time. Yes, we're having an election. This is when it's going to, well, geez, folks have to think about when it's going to be, how to get there. I mean, all of it takes time and time to organize. So I would stay with the 120.
What do you guys think?
I could go either way. I'd kind of be interested what Barb thought. I mean,
I do want to ask her because that's important enough.
If this was if this was a vacancy that was expected, then I think it honestly wouldn't be a problem because anyone who was anticipating that they might want to take a run at it would probably announce for the week following or before if it was something that was widely known. But God forbid there was ever like an accident or a sudden illness and suddenly you're in a different situation. It could be that there's somebody who wasn't even thinking about running and then like they've got to pull a campaign together. We all know that doesn't happen overnight.
Well,
so
they still have to put in papers within 33 days. That's a
Yeah.
whole month. I think that's enough time. They still have to do what Article 7 says. You have to get, 100 signatures and all that.
Right.
Let's say
Wait,
there's
JP, let me, Omar had a question first.
Oh.
Or state.
So my only concern about the 120 days is, what about if the city council president or any councilor, if the city council president decided they don't want that position, any other councilor, it's not gonna quit her or his job, right? So that we're gonna have a mayor that is not gonna be fully working for the city for 4 months.
That's a good point.
So, and that is concerning, right? I understand the 120 days. I understand that they will give it more opportunity to people to participate. Yes, on those terms. Where I'm still struggling to get the 120 days is about having the city for so long, not having someone in place that is going to be working 100% in that position.
I think you just hit on a really
That's a
interesting
good point.
and important point, is that there's a tension here where on one hand, rushed elections are bad. And on the other hand, having an interim government is bad.
Correct.
So there's not there's not one way or another. You're
And that's what I said. The 120
going
days doesn't
back-
bother me, but I have concerns.
But the 90 days, going back to that, there's still 43 days to do your campaign, get things together. I don't think that's so bad, JP. And I agree with Omar. What if somebody's in there for longer than 90 days? It could create a part-time mayor because they don't have to do what 3(1)A says. And down here, I do want them to get paid. I think if you have all the authority of a mayor, you should get paid for the responsibility, whether you work 40 hours a week or 20 hours a week. So that's what happens later on in this section. You should get paid. So 90 days seems like better to me, but you were going to say something, JP, and then I'll get to comment.
I thought Councilor Gomez's point was well taken. But then on the other hand, if you look at the council is presumably electing someone who said, I'll do the job for the 120 days. And I can do the job for 120 days. And presumably there might be 2 or 3 people who among the councilors would be.
That's only if the council president that's existing said
That's
no.
only if the council president doesn't want to. Presumably the council president would be the kind of person who would get into the role. Otherwise, maybe they shouldn't be council president. I don't know.
You never know.
Well, it's not political. I mean, you don't know who you're electing, and you don't know who's going to be interim mayor.
And you don't know how someone's.
The other thing is, I did want to mention that if there's an illness or a death, there should be ample time for the city to mourn or grieve or
That's a good point.
and not be thinking, let's have an election, and we're going to run. Let's get the papers, set up a team. That's going to take.
The other thing that's interesting
that would be a mistake.
I need your thinking on this. I put 7 months in, which means if the mayor vacated office 7 months before, like this year, okay,
Mm-hmm.
we have an election in November.
Right.
April, in a 7-month scenario, if they vacated the office in April, then the city council president is interim mayor for 7 months. Because we don't want to have too many elections. They cost money.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a cutoff at some point.
But is 7 months too long? But on that hand, you have a mayor who's going to be mayor, full-time mayor. But in that case, they have to vacate their position on the council. So they still have that choice. If the president says, I want to continue to be on the council, I'm running for re-election. Who else wants to do this? But that's the case. If you're at 7 months,
You have to quit.
you have to quit the council, because I thought I think that comes from Northampton, but there'd be too much conflict for 7 months.
How about if there was a situation where I said, say I'm the council president someday, but say that happens. Doesn't sound like an easy job. Say that were to happen and that this was to come down and I said, look, I'll run this thing for 7 months. but I'm not running for mayor.
But you can run for.
I'll run for council. I'll vacate my seat on the council.
Yeah, you could run again.
I'll run when my term comes up, but I'm just like,
And the
I'm-
council
yeah.
would have to do what we did for Billy Lynch's position. We nominate someone over that 7
someone,
months.
then maybe I have to run against that person. Or maybe they are just
maybe
gonna
that
hold
person
that
will
seat
take
too,
it.
but that's my problem and not the city's. Like,
So 7 months
Yeah,
is
that's
good
fine.
because I did 7 months to make it as long as I thought possible. So we didn't have to have elections on top. But if the mayor vacated in March, we'd have to have that election within 120 days. Even though there's another election in November. You see what
Yeah.
I'm getting at timing wise here? I don't know how to solve this problem.
well, it's the
So
same.
it'd be like April, May, June, July. There'd be an election in July and then there'll be another election in November.
It's the same thing that we're dealing with, when we're talking about, it's a trade-off between two bad things, right? You don't want two elections close to one another, and you also don't want an extended period of time with someone who wasn't elected to that post making important decisions. But you're going to deal with one of those, so it's just kind of a trade-off. And sort of like the 90 or 120 days, it's like, yeah, I could sort of see either, but I don't know.
I really want to invite Barbara. I don't think we're going to finish this discussion tonight, but I want to, hey, Owen,
Hey.
we already passed your thing. It's going upstairs.
Oh, okay. But
We're on to the charter.
all right, I'm just gonna sit for a few minutes.
I really want to get Barbara in here because
Yeah.
she'll have a lot of insight on all this timing.
The logistics of it.
Well, 7 months, you see what I'm getting at there though, JP and Omar, how if somebody vacates the office in March, we have an election in July. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Right.
And then we have another election in November. That seems contrary to what we're trying to do, but on the other hand, do we say the last year of the term?
Oh, I don't know. There's got to
That's
be
a long time.
there's just got to be a cutoff at some point, I mean,
Anybody have any thoughts on this?
What's our current situation?
Well, current situation is 90 days, but it's for a 2-year term. So there's a lot of holes that the city attorney told me. Number one, the president wouldn't have to resign from the council and the president would be interim mayor for that 90-day period, but I think it's a 90-day period. So within any time, there's no cutoff. In other words, if it happened in July, you'd have a 90 days from July, you'd have an election. That's the current charter. So that's why we need to change this.
Right.
Connie. Counselor Coniff.
Jeez.
So I agree with what JP was saying in terms of if there's an illness or a death.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good point.
We should not be callous and say, "Oh, well, we need to get someone in here." One. Secondly, I don't have a problem with the duration of that because if we are electing a city council president, then that is elected by your board of peers.
Mhm.
And if you're gonna sit there and say, wow, that person wasn't elected by the people, well, that person was elected within their district or their at-large, et cetera, and they were also elected by their council saying that we believe that this person is fit to be our leader. But then if we're saying that's not long enough, then why was that person elected as council president to begin with? I think
Well, I think that
we are as a body, but I also think that we just need to be cognizant of, we don't know why that person is. I mean, there may be turmoil, there may be great stuff. Maybe that person is loved deeply, right? And I think that we need to provide ourselves time to both mourn, but also time to recover and have leadership of that transition. But I think too much transition, I think that also causes stress.
I agree with you. And I like the idea that we don't want to mourn a death and have an election immediately. I think that's a great point, JP. Tommy.
I had
Tommy now, did you know that?
Oh, please don't call me that. I think that's like the one I really don't.
I'll remember that.
Okay, so one thought that I just had is if we just want to create like an arbitrary rule stick for how this whole thing goes, whatever we decide, if it's 90, if it's 100, if it's 120, whatever it is, double that And that's how long that, when the 7 month or whatever, where basically the standard is like, you shouldn't have an election if the period between the vacancy and the election is longer than the period between the election, the special election, and the real election. Like, you don't want to have a 90-day election 30 days before an election. That doesn't make any sense.
Right now, I think we can have that. I don't
But if you
remember.
had a situation where it's 180 days before, and it's like, okay, we're going to have an election, and 90 days later, we're going to have another election. Well, that's a little bit silly, but it's not the same amount of silly, in my opinion. You know, if we just need some sort of rationale for why we're choosing these numbers, maybe that's one. And I'll also just say, when it comes to, like, you know, something really shocking and traumatic, like a death, or I don't know, maybe in the future we join the number of Massachusetts communities who have a mayor that gets arrested, you know, like that.
Oh, Jesus.
Hopefully not, but it has happened before in many other communities, and we don't know who's going to get elected in the future. And like that, like I do think that when it comes to those things, like I appreciate wanting to have some time to sort of collect ourselves, but at the same time, like, there's a lot of decisions that go on, you know. And yeah, if there's just happens to be a counselor who's retired or who is able to take a leave of absence from their job and just step into that role, and they happen to have fantastic executive skills and a really deep knowledge of the city, then great, we got lucky. That might happen. It also might not. You could
I
easily
think the latter is more likely.
You could easily have a council where everyone is working full time and is not able to tell their job, excuse me, I'm going to leave for 90 or 120 or 7 months.
I would imagine in that case, I don't think I could do it in the kind of job I had at Smith, but let's just say it was somebody like you. You would work your job, then you come in after hours and work here for a few hours. And what the city loses, to go back to your point, is it's part-time for someone who has a full-time job to be the mayor, but you sign the purchase orders, you talk to people, and you really get into having whoever's on the top person here would be maybe Hadel and Jessica and the people here who would keep an eye on things. And then you come in later that day. But the problem with that is we're asking the staff to do that later. So there's a lot of things that have to be worked out.
It's certainly
would have to be dealt with, because why should we ask you to risk your job?
Yeah.
But
I mean, if that were to happen I think I'd have to take an unpaid leave of absence. And fortunately, I have a job that would probably be somewhat tolerant of that, but not everyone does.
Which goes to the other point I brought up in here, that let me see where I put it in. Shall receive compensation in the effort, in effect, for the office of mayor. I think it's the responsibility. And if you had to take a leave of absence, you wouldn't get paid. So you're going to get paid by the mayor. So I put that in. That wasn't in the, I don't think it's in the Northampton charter. But they wouldn't be able to receive compensation based on 2-3 as a city councilor. You can't get paid for both positions.
Should there be something about that compensation being prorated for, like, if someone's doing half-time?
No, I don't agree with that, because it's a responsibility you're getting paid for, not how long it takes. Because any mayor could put in less time in this office. There's no law that says you have to put in 40 hours. Our current mayor puts in a lot of time, but other mayors, they've left after 40. I know this.
Yeah, I was going to fire them. The voters.
Yeah, the voters are the only ones who have to deal with that. And if something doesn't get done, the voters are the only ones that make that decision. So I think it's a responsibility. It's your authority. You have to sign papers and approve appropriations. That's a big one. Okay. There's a couple of other things in here that I wanted to make you aware of why I put them in. I have the 7 months. I think we're having a consensus that that's okay, but think about it, everybody. And I want to see what Barbara has to say. In the last 2 months prior to a city election, the council president shall remain on the council for the last 2 months. If the vacancy should occur in September, council president is interim for those 2 months. And if the other thing in all of these is that immediately after the election is certified, the mayor's sworn in. In the case of a special election.
Mhm.
And in the case of the election of the mayor in a regular city election,
Mhm.
the mayor's sworn in that week. We don't wait till January. Because they're taking,
Yeah, that makes sense.
if it's a regular city, okay, it'd be 2 years. If it was this year's election, for
Mhm.
instance, there's 2 years left on the mayor's term, but
Right.
we don't have to have a special election. We have an election. It includes the mayor, but it's only 2 years.
That makes sense. That all makes a lot of sense. Can I ask a question?
No, of course. Why do you ask a question?
There's a lot of this about, the idea that either the council president, or if the council president isn't available, another councilor would be potentially acting mayor ahead of a special election. If that candidate, or if that person, actually, well, so then here's what if that person takes that role and then runs in that special election for mayor?
I don't have a problem with that.
Well, that's fine, but then that seat becomes vacated
No. Well, yeah,
if they win.
in the special election, then we
Yeah.
go back to the Bill Lynch
So
thing that
it
we
goes
did
back to
before.
the council
To appoint.
picks.
We have to appoint somebody, but you remember, the councilors are only 2-year terms.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking was, I don't know if this actually makes sense, but would it make sense to, if there's councilors running in that special election? Well, yeah, never mind. Forget it.
I think we just go back to appointing somebody for whoever wins.
Oh, I can see, like, if all the councils are running for that special election, but they will keep being the city councilor, that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, no, what I was really thinking
But
is
you
like,
can, that's not.
No, I know.
I was kind of thinking like, would it make sense to, if someone is effectively vacating their seat to run, sort of like, look, if there's a normal election in a normal year and I decide to run for mayor, I am not running for city council. Would it, if you said that it's the same rules here, you run for mayor in a special election, you're vacating your seat and somebody else can run.
I disagree with that, because you don't have to vacate your seat in legislative bodies all over the country if you're running. If you're running for an election in which you might lose, but your term isn't up in the other office you hold, you don't have to vacate it.
Yeah, well,
Like a senator has a 6-year term. They run for, I think that happened. The vice president candidate under, was it Clinton, had to give up, or Kamala Harris. I think she wouldn't have lost her Senate seat if they lost the election, right? I don't think so. So I'm just, and I also don't like the fact that we're going to be leaving a lot of what if 7 councilors want to run?
Yeah,
that'd be a little hard.
You never know. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to throw
But
it
this
out.
is why we do this. We
Yeah.
have to talk through all the scenarios to see if there's something we should do. Anything, JP, on all this?
Well, just back to another question about 39A. So 39A, section, where the first sentence, in the event that the city council president is unable to serve. How do you define that? Should it be unable or unwilling?
Unable because I have a job and I can't get out of it. Unable. The city council president.
I don't
says
think
I'm
they're
unable.
capable. They're unable.
Well,
If it just says unable or unwilling, then or unable or chooses not to, then that solves the
I
mayor.
don't want to say unwilling. I think unable is better. But
I know.
yeah.
I like unable or chooses not to serve.
Does that open up any sort of role for a controversy if there's a person who wants to serve, but say is not going to put in the time that other counselors feel like we say you're not? What does able mean? Like in this situation, like I just feel like there's a unless we say that if is it the city council president's sole? Do they have the sole authority to determine whether or not they are able to serve?
It's up to the person involved.
Right. And
if they said they weren't able to serve, then who wants to run for city council president? Everybody raises their hand. A few people aren't going to say no because they don't think they could do the mayor.
No, I appreciate, this is a pedantic question, but just the word able has a lot of meanings and in things.
If you can think of a better one.
Well, I think that all we would need to do is say, which line is that on?
Right here, unable to serve.
Okay. In the event that the council president is unable to serve, if you just say like, in the event that the council president determines that they are unable to serve, right? Like, just to make sure that the decision, it says if they are unable to serve, I do think that given these circumstances and how tense this could get, we need to determine what the process is for determining that this person is able to serve or not. And like, because what if a counselor comes in and they really don't like that person and they say, I don't think they're going to be able to do this job because of a conflict of interest or because they're a big idiot or whatever. Like, you know, I think like that's.
Well, wait, say that again, because as soon as the mayor vacates the position, the president of council is automatic interim mayor, unless they tell the council I can't do it.
And that's
I mean, you can't let the council decide, okay, we don't want this president to be mayor.
Well, you shouldn't do that. But what I'm saying right here is that because right now there's no language in there designating the process under which such a person would be deemed able or unable to serve. So if you just said, unless the president determines that they are unable to serve, then you circumvent that. But otherwise, I just think it leaves open a really dumb, simple situation.
I put the language in. What do you think? I mean, that's what your language here. Unless the president determines they are unable to serve, there would be no is. I like it. I like it better.
Okay.
What do you think, JP?
Well, I would, I think Councilor Peak's comments solve my problem with the word unable and the reason I brought it up. So I think I'd be willing to move that we include the language as proposed.
Well, I don't think we need to do that yet unless what do you guys think? Do you think we have to vote on each one of these changes? Because this is my thinking. It's not like this whole charter section is new language for our charter. So I think we can just reach consensus on all this stuff and move forward, JP, and then vote on it. I'd like to do that anyway. I don't want to vote on every change.
With whatever process you choose, I'm in favor of changing the language.
Okay, well, we have a consensus then, so I'll keep it in there. And I'll do this italics because that'll remind me that the committee decided to change it. See this here, the shall only vote on council measures in the event of a tie vote. I decided that should be the case as it is now for the council president and our committees, etc. Because the interim mayor is still on the city council and sits on the council, just like the mayor sits on the school board.
But is the council president is no longer the mayor? I think the mayor should relinquish the position of council president while they are acting mayor.
I didn't think that was fair. That was fair to the acting mayor.
They could return to that position, but I think to serve as council president and acting mayor at the same time, I don't know.
I agree.
That's some thought.
I mean, I sort of feel like given that they're really only supposed to be voting on tie-breaking issues in this proposal, perhaps for that period, the vice president should be the acting council president, just because I really do think that council presidents have to make a lot of calls that potentially they shouldn't be making if they're also the acting mayor.
All right, and should I put in the vice president of the council shall be president during this period?
Or she'll serve as acting president during this period.
I think that makes sense.
That in the case of the president is being acting mayor,
that the vice president would be acting council president.
I'm gonna tell you what is my concern about that. When I was working with that, I was thinking about it.
Meanwhile, the acting mayor could.
Wait, JP.
I'm sorry, I
No, now
Let me
the
finish.
acting mayor, and if there was the state city council president,
Mhm.
now everybody in the city hall will respond to that. Only one person,
Mhm.
like Halo. Halo don't respond to the mayor. Responds to the council, city auditor, the same. The assessor and the clerk. So I think it will be a conflict if the president.
That's a very good point.
I think that's where I am there. Like, I shouldn't be this holding the two positions at the same time, because now the position they're not supposed to respond to the mayor is going to respond to one person.
Right.
And if they're interim mayor and they're not running for election, they go back to being the president, because this only says the new language, the vice president council serve as acting president during the period. So when you're done being the acting mayor, you go back to being the president. But the president serves at the pleasure of the council. So the council could say, well, we want to vote on that again. Somebody could make a motion to remove the president. I mean, you can do that anytime.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't happen.
But I think the presumption should be that the position that the acting mayor returns to the position of council president, and of course then is subject to a vote of the full council.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have to happen. If someone should decide that.
If someone's got an issue with it, they can bring it up at any time, but it doesn't.
They can bring it up now at any time.
Yeah. So I think
now.
But I think that he brings up a good point. There's a conflict of interest there. There's a conflict within and powers kind of
right.
thing.
You're centering a ton of power in one person. And the other issue that I was seeing with it is that if you have a acting mayor who's not really supposed to be taking a lot of council votes unless it's a tie-breaking vote, there's a lot of decisions that a council president needs to make over the course of any given week that they might be like, oh, geez, I really shouldn't be. And also, it's just a lot of time, and that's a lot of time in addition to drinking from a fire hose because you're now the acting mayor. It just seems like that would be a situation where look, we have a vice president for a reason, is that if something happened, that person, is able to.
I just thought of something else. The mayor comes up and does mayor speak. Or mayor speak from where you're sitting.
Yeah, you get up and you walk over.
Well, so what? I mean, that's what you have to do. I mean, all of this is scenarios, what if scenarios, and we have to be prepared. Because you know why? I've learned over the years, if it's not in the charter, the city attorney gets to decide how it should be based on where it is everywhere else. So ambiguity is fine to a certain extent, but then we're leaving it up to that city attorney and his research into what we should do. I asked him, what happens now if there's a vacancy in the mayor's position? He gave me some thoughts. I think I sent that to you, but it's still difficult. So we're pretty clear that 120 days, I think we reached consensus on that.
Yep.
Article 7 is about election parameters. All of this is good. I think we're okay in the 7 months down here, the election parameters. I mean, there's going to be an election. If someone resigned in March, there'd be an election in July and then another election in November. I mean, that's a scenario that could happen. If it's in April, no, there's no election. That's what 7 months means.
So using Councilor Peak's logic, when would be the day that you would start counting the days until the special election? And then how many days would remain until the regular election? I like the logic of it. The 120 should not be less than the period of service of the.
By my logic, then it would be 240 days, which is about 8 months.
That's a long time.
Well, I mean, so is 7. That's just like, I mean, I don't necessarily, and again, I was fine with the idea of moving it down to 90, and then that would be 6 months,
I like 7 months. It's kind of a compromise.
I think that's I think that's acceptable. I don't really, none of these decisions are going to be perfect. It's just
the other thing, we're going to have to send this to the city attorney, and he may come up with things that you can't really do that. state law doesn't allow you to do that. So we have to see what happens, because there's a lot in here.
Just a typo question.
Where?
Paragraph C, or section C, second paragraph, the line that says section 211. I'm not sure what that refers to. Is it?
Where are we? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Section C.
Yeah, special election parameters.
Second paragraph, notwithstanding. At the bottom of that paragraph, it says, my copy.
This is the Bill Lynch thing, 211.
Oh, good, 211. That was typoed.
Yeah,
my copy.
Vacancy
It
shall
said
exist.
211. Wasn't aware we had a section 211. Here I see the change on the screen.
2-11. It's not 200.
Yeah, that's good. Yep. Sorry. I was looking at, it must be the copy you sent us.
I thought I sent this to you. I hope. Okay, so now, the vacancy shall occur in the month 47, 48 of the term for which the mayor was elected. So the new mayor is elected, let's just say that if our election this year was for a mayor, and the current mayor decided to leave office before their term was done in the 47th to 48th month, then the new mayor would get sworn in immediately.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's
There's
all
no
that
reason
is.
the acting mayor should sit around for a month and a half.
No, there wouldn't be an acting mayor, because the new mayor would
New
just,
mayor's the
and
mayor.
they're elected anyway.
Yeah.
The mayor-elect, that's the term. Does that make sense to you, JP?
Could you, I'm sorry, I was just reading again, and could you clarify that one more time?
The mayor is just elected in November.
Yep.
The day after the election, that mayor decides, the former mayor, the mayor-elect is elected in November. The mayor that is leaving office decides to leave office in November, not in January. This section allows for the mayor-elect to be sworn in immediately, so that there wouldn't be the council president as interim mayor, since we have an elected mayor anyway. In other words, there wouldn't be any transition period, they'd be a mayor. That's what this does.
I think we have to watch the language then.
Where?
Of section E, because I like what you're proposing. You're saying that, if a vacancy occurs, the mayor-elect shall be sworn in. Well, let's say the mayor-elect had plans until January.
Well, I shouldn't have run. I don't know.
No, I'm running for an election in November, and the plan is I will start serving January 1st or 2nd. Okay, good. Now the mayor decides to up and leave. I shouldn't have to serve. The mayor shouldn't have to serve. Shall be sworn in.
I disagree.
What if they don't want? What if they're going to? Hey, listen, I took a vacation
Yeah.
after the election. I'm on a cruise for a month.
Well, that's too bad. They ran for office.
Well, okay, mayors can go on vacation,
And the other problem is,
but that's your authority now. It's your situation.
and I don't think an unelected city council president should be mayor for 2 months when we have an elected mayor who just wants to go on vacation.
I think I agree with you that the person should be offered immediately the position, and the position could start immediately. Yes, absolutely. My thought was, well, what if they say no? I'm going to start January 2nd. Now what do? The charter says I shall be sworn in.
They don't have any choice, because the charter is.
I can't leave my job. I have to give.
If you leave this in, the charter is gospel.
No, but
In other words,
my
they don't
thought
have
is,
choice, right?
I mean,
let's say the mayor has a job. Let's say
Huh?
the mayor has a job, and the person running for mayor has a job, and they say, geez, if I'm elected on November 2nd or 3rd, I'm going to resign my position, and I'm going to be able to leave that position January 2nd.
Well, then they
with a
don't
new
do
job.
like what the scenario where Tom Peak is the interim mayor has to leave of absence or has to work part-time. I mean,
you figure it out, but ultimately the authority is the mayor's. If the mayor says, okay, I'm going to get sworn in, but look, I actually won't be physically able to be here for a month, then you might have the council president being the acting mayor for that extra month, but the authority but that's the same thing that happens if the mayor currently has to take an
but
absence.
the authority of the acting mayor in those cases does not include all of the executive authority. In other words,
Yeah.
you can't sign purchase orders. You can't do the things that the mayor.
I mean, you figure
Like
it
now,
out.
if you're president and you're interim mayor, you can't do the work of the mayor according to the charter.
Because I'm sorry, I need to run. I got to
Some
get
of it.
ready for
Okay.
band practice. But.
All right, what I'm gonna do then is move this, try to get Barbara here so we can continue talking about this, okay? Next meeting?
Good.
We talked about the other charter changes. I thought we reached consensus. Those were simple compared to this.
Good
Thanks.
discussion.
Oh, yeah, I like it. I like it. Anything else, Connie, on any of this? Still thinking? All right, then. I'm gonna close this meeting, and we have another meeting next week. JP, I saw you.
Yeah, I see. I
Well, no,
found
that's because this meeting was supposed to happen last week, and I couldn't do it, so.
right. Good. Next week.
So, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion to adjourn, all in favor, Counselor Krasinski,
Aye.
Counselor Denham,
Aye.
Counselor Wiss says aye. Thank you.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.